So we are now live, and during commercial breaks, we'll obviously still be live on there. So.
Okay. So don't pick your nose.
Yeah, don't pick your nose. If you drop F-bombs, they're there. So ideally not on the air though. There's not a there's no delay. So. Okay. All right, Jerry, check.
Check.
A little closer.
Oh.
Or you can pull this too.
Oh, there we go. Check. Check. Let's try this. Okay. Oh.
Excellent. 4 minutes, 33 seconds. Okay, yeah, so the glare's not too bad. Not going off the back of my head. So that's
The
good.
what?
The sun's not going off the back of my head, so
No,
that's good.
we've just been so lucky with the weather. It's been amazing.
It's great.
I just got home from France recently and came home
nice.
through the fires.
Oh, jeez, yeah.
And it was like, what is this?
How long were you in France for?
12 days.
Nice.
Did Paris, did the south of France. Yeah.
Oh, how'd you like it?
It was amazing. Yeah.
My wife and I took our 2 youngest kids to Italy last year. So we went to Italy for 14 days.
Rome.
Loved it. Oh, yeah.
Florence.
Yeah. Sorrento Coast was the best. We were in this little farm house that had like 4 bedrooms and a restaurant and a private beach.
You took the 2 littles?
Yeah. We were teenagers, so.
Yeah, the older ones, they grow up and they're busy. They have a job.
Couldn't get the time off.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah. The travel is, I think, one of the best educators, though.
Absolutely, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And if you can expose them to that at a young age.
Yeah.
I have the coolest story about what happened with my daughter. I sent her to France last year with a friend before she started college because I kind of wanted her to expand
Where is she
a
going to
little
school?
bit. University of Utah.
Oh, Utah, okay.
Yeah. And she went to this spa and she told her friend's mother, I really want to bring my mom here someday. This is in the south of France. I ended up staying in the exact same place.
Oh, wow.
Had no idea it was.
Oh, no, 2 minutes.
Can you believe that?
No.
She manifested a trip for me to the south of France.
That's wild.
Yes, I was down there and I said, I think we're real close to where she stayed. And then I got in touch with her friend's mom and she told me, and I said, I can't believe it. I'm staying in the exact same place. Like the coast of the south of France is very, there's a lot of selections there.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So.
Yeah, when we were there last year, I don't know how familiar with Italy. I wasn't until I got there.
I've been a couple times.
Okay, so you go down the Sorrento coast and then it turns into the Napoli coast.
Yeah, okay, yes.
And that edge is basically where we stayed, the break between the two, the end of Sorrento.
So is that anywhere near Cinque Terre?
I think so.
Okay, yeah, it's on the coast, but I'm not sure.
But just south of that was the Napoli coast, but the road is closed when we were there because they were having fires down there, so you couldn't get down there. So unfortunately, we couldn't go further down to see the Napoli coast.
Yeah.
The Sorrento coast is beautiful.
Oh, it's
amazing.
And the way they live.
Yeah.
Is.
Yeah. What's interesting is we to get there, to get to Sorrento, you go through that long tunnel, right? It's like miles long.
Oh, wow.
But the guy told us it took him 32 years to build it.
Wow.
So the way they live there, yes, you got some interesting aspects of that, right? So 32 years. Can you imagine in California it took 32 years to build a tunnel?
No, I didn't know that it would happen. Maybe this thing Elon Musk is doing will take 32 years. I don't know.
That could be.
Yeah.
The Hyperloop thing or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that thing's pretty bomb. I went to a TED Talk one time when they talked about that. The guy that's involved in the Hyperloop talked about it and kind of showed.
How interesting.
Yeah. So it'd be interesting to see if that ever comes
You
around.
went to the TED Talk?
Yeah, well, they had local ones.
Oh, okay.
Because they have TEDx here. So,
do they?
Yeah, so Brandon Weber,
that one would have been TEDx and Burning Man.
Oh, is that right? No, Brandon Weber, we actually had him on the show a few times. He's with the Urban Hive. And he's got the rights to the TEDx in Sacramento, so he's put on a number of them.
Really?
Yeah, so it's really cool. It's like a half day, and they have 6 or 8 things.
Do they do it, at the Doubletree down here somewhere? Or?
He did it at the Wells Fargo Pavilion one time, and at the community center.
Okay.
Community center, right? Yeah, where they like to do the plays and stuff. Community center.
How frequently do they do those?
Varies.
Okay.
He doesn't have any real schedule.
Be great.
But it'll be music, art, and then talks. That's amazing.
That was Burning Man had just such a variety of speakers. We stayed in the camp where they filmed the TEDx talks.
Oh, that's cool.
And one of my friends who owns a solar company was on it, and he spoke about solar. After the dust storm, though.
Yeah. All right, I think we're on.
All right.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Beyond the Numbers on My 1055. This is Mark Bellows, your host of this show. I am a tax principal with Clifton Larson Allen, national CPA firm with an office in Roseville. I work with manufacturing and distributing companies, real estate investors and developers, and contractors. Do the tax stuff, planning, compliance, strategy, trying to help everyone understand the new tax laws, and there's a lot to do with that. So we've been busy. Plus, September 15th is a deadline, and October 15th is the deadline, so busy times around our offices and in the world of accounting, very exciting times. But anyway, if you ever have any questions about tax or just accounting in general, we'd love to talk to you. My number is 916-784-7800 or mark.bellows@claconnect.com is my email address. And been doing this show for a few years now. I've had guest hosts off and on. I'm not presently with a guest host, but I'm looking for one, so if anyone is interested, please let me know. And today I do have a guest on, though, which is Stacy Whittingham. Good morning.
Good morning, Mark.
How are you?
Great. Doing well, thank you.
You said your commute here wasn't bad.
Not too bad. I anticipated it to be a little bit worse, but it was a slow roll, but not too slow.
You came from Folsom. And we're down by Cal Expo for those in this area.
Yeah.
And I think Sac State is back in now, so there's a lot more traffic out on the roads, and kids are back in school and stuff, so. Anyway, it was a little bit busier coming today for me than it has been, so I'm sure people out there experiencing some traffic. But anyway, welcome to the show.
It was kind of like going back in time for me because in one of my past lives, I used to commute down here, to this area. So.
Is that right?
Yeah, it was
interesting. And you were
to
living
do
in Folsom
today.
at the time,
I
so
was.
you did that commute.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
Do you come across Watt, or which way do you? How do you get here?
Just come 80 east.
80.
Yeah.
Oh, 80.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Well, so Stacy, tell us what you do.
So currently I'm a partial owner of a yoga studio in Folsom, Leap Yoga, and I also teach classes, and I also focus on nutrition, so holistic nutrition as well.
So where is Leap Yoga?
Folsom.
Oh, where is Folsom?
Yeah. Oh, it's off Iron Point.
Iron Point. Okay.
Yeah, right next to Folsom High School.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, how long has that studio been there?
We're going on, I think, our 7th year right now. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so, how many classes do you guys have a day?
A lot.
Do you have a lot of rooms in there?
We have one room with a wall that you can take up or take down and put up. And so we can accommodate a smaller group and then a larger group at the same time, or one really large group. That's one of the things that we've been looking at is space. Because there's a lot going on right now. Yeah, and we do have classes from 5:45 in the morning all the way to 7:35 at night. So.
Okay, and weekends and all that stuff as well, of course.
Yeah,
so.
workshops, all kinds of stuff.
How many different instructors are there?
We have about 20.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so you're an owner.
I'm an owner.
And how long have you been a part owner? How long have you been an owner?
October 2017.
Okay.
So I worked for Leap since they started in February, 7 years ago, and I just taught classes there. And the studio has always felt like home to me.
Right.
So I taught at a lot of different places in Sacramento, commuted, and anybody that would hire me when I first became a teacher.
Sure.
I just wanted to gather up as much experience as I could. And then I kind of found a place that felt really, really good and in alignment with what I wanted to share, and that was Leap. So I landed there as a teacher, and then a few years ago they had some changes in ownership, and I took on a management position there. So I started managing the teachers and creating the programming for the studio.
Okay.
And then shortly after that, they asked me if I would like to become part owner. So there are 5 owners, actually, 2 couples and myself,
Okay.
and we all work together and have different responsibilities. So.
Good. And so you said the programming for the studio. So I've been part of a yoga studio at different times, and I'll notice they'll have certain classes for a period of time, and then they'll change them out and put different classes in. So how do you kind of determine that? Is it based on attendance or feedback from customers, or what do you?
It's an art. It's an art.
It is.
I try to tell people it's sort of like casting a movie in a way. Different instructors will come and ask if they can teach there, and we do this thing called an audition, and I'm not even sure I like that word.
Right.
The audition is simply just sort of like an evaluation of what their style is,
Okay.
and where they might fit best, because different times of day and different offerings, they have a different demographic that attends. And so I feel like my job is primarily to sort of put those pieces together in the very best way.
Right.
So
Right.
matching instructors with class times that work best for them, where they can shine. And so that's one of the things that I do. I also decide which classes go where, and what we bring into the studio and what we don't. So there's a pretty broad spectrum of offerings that we could engage in, and so it's kind of up to my discretion of what we offer and what we don't at the studio.
And so do you still have that role?
I do.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you've kept that role for the last couple of years.
Yeah, that's my primary role.
Okay, gotcha.
But then, of course, when you become an owner, everything is your role.
Right.
And
Yeah,
so
you get the keys to the building, and you got to make sure
Exactly.
everything from the bathrooms being clean to the lights and power working. Do you guys do any hot yoga, or is it non-hot?
So we have both, and
Okay.
that's one of the artistic parts. Is I get all the surveys. Customer feedback is really important to us, and we want to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the people that come there to practice. And so we have Listen 360, and so these surveys come in
Right.
from our community, and half will say more heat, half will say less heat. It's just a preference thing, and so we try to accommodate that. So we have both, actually.
Okay.
Mhm.
So how do you survey people? Is it paper, or do you have an app, or what do you
It's
guys do?
Listen 360 is the company that we
Oh,
use.
okay. All right.
Yeah, and then they send out a survey via email,
Yeah, okay.
and then this is shortly after a visit or something.
So you capture all of your guests or your
Yeah.
people have a membership, right? So all your members' email addresses, and then they get the surveys.
Anybody that comes to the studio fills out a waiver.
Okay.
So we gather the contact information, and then shortly after their visit, they'll receive a survey, and they may or may not feel inclined to fill that out, but we really appreciate it when they do,
Yeah.
because it's important information to us.
Yeah, surveys are typically 20% response, maybe. If you're
Yeah.
lucky.
Pretty low. It's
It can be.
interesting because I don't have anything to compare it to. I've never
Okay.
used this before
Right.
in any of my previous jobs, but it gives you, Listen 360 will give you sort of like the success rate. Like, are your customers happier in this last quarter, or is their level of satisfaction going down? And you can kind of manage that. And then it also, it gives us the ability to contact that person
Okay.
and maybe have a conversation about what it was that worked for them or what didn't, So,
Which is nice.
really great.
Because that could be the difference between keeping or not keeping the customer.
right.
Do people sign up on a month? We're getting close to commercial, but we'll start with this. Do people sign up for monthly, or is it annual, or
They have a
recurring?
lot of different options.
good.
They can buy class passes. They can become a monthly member, which is my recommendation, because for a yoga practice to really have an impact, it needs to be a regular practice.
that makes sense.
Yeah, as you know.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to take a break. When we get back, we'll continue the conversation with Stacy Whittingham of Leap Yoga. You listen to Beyond the Numbers.
Okay.
That was great.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. All
I
right.
do have tax questions for you.
Okay.
Well, it's funny because you brought up taxes, and I'm thinking, we just paid a penalty because I guess it changed this year, and you don't get like a notice for your, I don't know if it's the sales tax that's due
Or property tax could be
something that came in.
because sales tax usually you pay either monthly or quarterly, depending on your sales. Do you guys sell like water bottles and yoga mats and stuff like that, right? So that's in the sales tax.
Mhm.
And
I think
also,
that's what it was.
there's also an annual property tax, and you don't get a notice on that. You have to know to go to the website, the county, and do it.
When you say property tax, that's only if you own your own building, though, right?
No, you get two kinds of property tax. One is the tax on the building, but then the other is property tax on any of your equipment. And that's the one that's a personal property tax, it's called. It's when you non-real property. So that's personal property tax, and that's one that you have to actually go to the website and fill it out.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And what they do is they roll over last year's form, you just add, make additions. But if people don't think about it, you don't get a letter from the county, don't forget to file your property tax.
Right, so I think what happened is
that could be either one.
we all, like I said, have our responsibilities, and the one who was in charge of the finances didn't get the notice somehow she normally gets, and that's
possible. Yeah.
So that's one of the things that, you know,
taxes. Oh yeah, that's why I have a good CPA.
Right.
And we're back. You're listening to Beyond the Numbers on my 105.5 FM. Beyond the Numbers, I said that right. We are a weekly business talk show hosted by me, Mark Bellows. I am a tax principal with Clifton Larson Allen. Work with various types of businesses, including manufacturers and distributors, contractors, real estate investors and developers, the businesses, their owners, executives, that sort of thing. So tax planning, strategy, and all that. And then also get a chance to do this show on a periodic basis, weekly. And then I'm now putting together some webinars for our company. I'm going to be doing them on the new Section 199A deduction, which is exciting stuff. And yeah, so welcome to Beyond the Numbers. Today we're talking with Stacy Whittingham, who's an instructor and part owner of Leap Yoga in Folsom. And Stacy was telling us about that they use a survey company. What's it called again?
Listen 360.
Listen, you told me 4 times. Okay. I think I would get it. Listen 360. Okay. Have you guys always done that? Or is this relative?
Since the studio started, yes, they've used that, I believe. And it's been very useful. Yeah.
So through the course of that, have you found out things that have changed? I mean, maybe give an example of what you've learned from doing the surveys that say, hey, we're going to stop doing this class or add this class.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I've used that information quite a bit.
A lot. Okay. So it's very valuable.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Do you have to change instructors very often?
We try not to. So the community is an important aspect of our studio, and not every yoga studio focuses so much on community. It's interesting that you asked that question, because I think that there's a real balance that has to occur when you talk about the people who are on your team, right? So moving from being on the team to actually now part ownership of the business, you see different aspects of the business itself that you didn't realize existed as just a team member.
Of course.
Right?
Yes,
so we do focus on the family and the community aspect of the studio. That's an important part to us, but at the same time there's a balance with people who have the same vision that we have. And that's one of the things I think that has been a big learning curve for me, is just to pay attention to the people who have the same vision that I do for the business, and facilitate their success in our studio. I had this experience myself when I first became a teacher. I taught somewhere that didn't feel like I was in alignment with what was being offered there.
Yeah.
And I was so excited to be teaching, and I would teach anywhere. And so, but it just didn't feel quite right to me.
Right.
I stuck with it, for a while, and then I started to question, like, maybe this just isn't the right fit. And I had conversations with some of my mentors, and then it took kind of a big leap to let that go. Pun intended, because that's part of the name.
Yeah.
But once I did, other things opened up, and I never looked back. And so having had that experience, when somebody doesn't feel exactly right in the space, change isn't a bad thing. Yeah. And so,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I know out in in all types of businesses, when you're building teams, you want to make sure that the team members are aligned with the goals of the team. And then you as a team member want to make sure that you're on a team whose goals align with you. Because it's got to be both ways.
Exactly.
So, and I know that within our firm, we build teams, with our office and industry groups. I mean, we have teams, and we're always making sure, doing things with the team members, and we really want to make sure that person, it's a right fit for both sides.
Right. Yes. And I think that businesses kind of go through like a rebirthing process, and if they don't, then they probably don't continue to realize their full potential.
Yep.
Because everything is always shifting and everything is always changing, and there's new trends that come. And one of the things we've gone through this a couple of times in the past 7 years where we've sort of like reinvented and changed things. And one of the things that is really important to us at Leap is that everybody feels like they can practice yoga. So in a lot of the studios that offer simply power yoga, that is not accessible to a lot of people. And so when
So explain to me briefly, what is power yoga and then why is it not accessible?
Okay, power yoga is pretty vigorous.
Okay.
And oftentimes it's associated with heat. And so people with injuries or who are maybe the older demographic, it's just not going to feel good to them to go into some of these power yoga classes in a room that's 90 plus degrees and move their bodies in that way. It's just not going to work for them.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate because yoga is not just that. I mean, yes, that's an aspect of the practice itself, but there's so many other parts to yoga, and those need to be offered so that people can access the benefits.
Right.
And so that was something that became really important to me. And I actually I did most of my training in San Francisco, and so I had explored a lot of the offerings over there. And there was one chain of studios in the city that I thought did it really well. It's called Yoga Tree. And they had excellent instructors, but they taught in a lot of different styles and a lot of different things. But they were all very good and well trained at what they offered, and they kept it tethered to kind of like the sort of like the roots of the practice itself, because it's an old practice, been around anywhere between 5,000 and 8,000 years.
Right.
So yoga itself has morphed over times. Yeah. And so anyway, that's been a really important thing to us, and we've done some exciting things around including offerings that are accessible to pretty much anybody. So we have special needs yoga where the kids from Folsom High come over and they take yoga at the studio, and it's one of my favorite classes to be in. One experience I had is just watching this young boy, and I could tell he got it here, but he wasn't able to move his body the way that he was being asked to move his body. But I could see on his face that he had every intention of moving his body in the way that the instructor was asking for. And so, but he did everything he could do, and I thought success. This person got to experience success on his mat, and so that is really important to me. Yeah,
that's great. Those are fulfilling, I think, experiences. To go through those. Yeah. So what? Maybe a little bit about like some latest trends you've seen in yoga. And are you guys part of that or not? Is Leap part of that or not?
So, as you know, yoga is trendy. And you can do the bracelets and the tattoos and the dreads and the whole thing, and then you can do none of that. And yoga, over time has always been evolving. It started with classical yoga, then tantric yoga came along, and different things evolved. And I think, in India for a period of time, and I'm not quite sure how it is now, but everybody practiced yoga, or most of the population did. And then it went to a phase where it was kind of like the practice was something that the older generations did. Right? And then now it's so popular in the West that friends who have visited India have been told, you're bringing it back for us. And so it's kind of like this, cool. Yeah. And so I think in the West, we received it because we needed it. And then like we do here, we sort of turn it into our own thing, right? Yeah. And there's some positives about that, but personally, what I feel is it's really important to stay connected to what the practice truly is. It's not a Zumba class. It's not a step aerobics class. It's not, you get the benefits of exercise, but it's not really that, right? Yeah. So, I've seen these trends. And so power yoga has been very popular and very good. And, but now I'm also seeing it, people really searching for the authenticity of the practice, to be able to go back to some of the kind of older versions of the practice, like Ashtanga yoga and different things like that, and we try to accommodate that. We try to provide that. So I'll seek out teachers who can offer those things.
Okay. So how do you find teachers? Do you talk to other studios, or do you?
I don't fish in other people's ponds. I try not to,
Okay.
you know. And that brings me to kind of like the interesting balance of marrying yoga with business.
Right.
So it could be tricky, I think, for anybody to take like their passion and to marry that with an actual business. You see, because sometimes you become dispassionate about the business, but you're still passionate about the thing, and so it can change that for you. And I've observed certain studio owners, and actually avoided becoming a studio owner for a while because I do have some background in business, and kind of corporate America and things like that. And when I became a yoga teacher, I just wanted to teach yoga, and my business mind was like, hey, why don't you do this? And then I resisted that for quite a while until I felt like it was the right time and the right setting. But yeah, I think. Now I forget what your original question was.
We're talking about trends in yoga.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm coming back to staying tethered to the roots and not getting too far off course with that, but also continuing to be innovative and meet the needs of the people who come.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, let's talk a little bit about your background. You mentioned business background. So maybe what were you doing? Where'd you go to school? What'd you get a degree in? What'd you start doing before you got into the ownership of the yoga studio?
So I went to school in the 80s at BYU, Brigham Young in Utah. I grew up in Stockton, so I was a local girl. And then, so I went to BYU, and I wanted to be a business major. And I studied Japanese. I lived in Tokyo for a little bit. Did some different things, and then figured out that with my desire to see and do an experience, that it was going to take me a lot longer to graduate in international business than it would travel and tourism. So I ended up getting my degree in travel and tourism, and I minored in business. And then I became a mom, and I lived all over the country. We moved back east. My husband at the time was an editor for Simon & Schuster Higher Education. And I got on with Simon & Schuster, and I started doing some synergy projects. Like at the time, they were owned by Viacom. And so Viacom also owned Paramount and MTV. And so I was part of the Rock the Vote campaign and different things like that, if you remember.
I remember that,
Yeah. And so I could work part-time in New York City and commute in and still take care of my little one. And so did that, and then later down the road got a job with Trader Publishing as a sales rep. So that's when I got into sales, and then after that worked for HSBC Bank in this area, and then when the whole mortgage crisis hit, HSBC let go of their mortgage division for a period of time.
Were you in the mortgage division?
Yes, I was a wholesale rep for them. And so we stayed on for a bit, kind of trying to see if they were going to be able to weather it, and then everything changed. So then at that point in time, I was kind of deciding, okay, what do I want to do? And I had an opportunity to get into lead generation. And so when somebody wants to get a quote on their insurance, you send out all these forms, and then all these people fill this out, and then you sell it to the insurance companies. So I started to develop this business, and it was my business, and it was very lucrative, and I hated it. I didn't enjoy sitting behind a computer all day long, no interaction with people, and just having it all be about the money, right? It's good money, but it was just,
all about the money. Okay, we got to take a break.
Okay.
When we get back, we'll continue the conversation, learn more about how Stacy went from lead generation to yoga. We'll be right back.
I got totally lost. I knew I was making a point, and then I forgot what's that point.
So did you guys live you lived out, you said commute to the city, so where'd you live?
New Jersey.
Oh, okay.
We were in Bergen County, which is, and it's just such a small world. We lived in Bergen County, which nobody knows where Bergen County is. Most people out here don't. And I was just talking to a student the other day, and he said, oh yeah, my ex-wife lives in Mahwah. And I said, that's exactly where I used to live, Mahwah, New Jersey. Yeah. It's a beautiful part of the state, too.
Do you need more water? Are you good?
Oh, I should have some just because my wife. Yeah, that was a good experience to work in a big city like that and get that, sort of like, it was a good time. Then they
How long were you there?
We only lived back east for a little over a year, and then they allowed me to keep the same position. I worked for one of the VPs at Simon & Schuster, and they allowed me to keep that same position and move back out west. So we moved to Arizona because my husband at the time took a job as the Western Region sales manager.
Okay.
So it was,
That's yeah. During those days, it was really, you said the synergy. I mean, that's really when you started seeing. When I, anyways, as a young man, started seeing that come to the forefront. That synergies of things, right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, of course, nowadays Disney goes and buys Star Wars, and then the synergies that they can, cross market everything.
You're right about that. I
But it seems like that's,
it's like the Amazon situation,
Yeah, right. Amazon and Whole Foods now, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, you mentioned that's really when I think probably when we really started. I started seeing that kind of synergy in the world. So it's interesting.
It was really cool to be a part of that, because they would take the the textbook companies and then do this Rock the Vote campaign at all the college campuses.
Yeah.
And that was just really neat to be a part of that.
No, what part, what did you do with Rock the Vote?
I did a lot of just the planning behind the scenes in the city. Yeah, I didn't actually get to go out on the sites.
So how did you guys get started? How did that get started?
The Rock the Vote? We had, actually, I worked for this vice president at Prentice Hall Publishing, which was part of Simon & Schuster. And she was just an innovator. I mean, she just had ideas and fearless. She was fearless in what she would present, and her ideas were very out of the box. And she came up with an idea that was about student success, and I think we need that more than ever now.
Yeah.
And it's giving kids the skills that they need to be successful in college. And it's that thing that, like, kids go in and they think, oh, I should already know this, and they don't. Yeah. And then they stumble, and then they feel, I'm not worthy, or, this isn't for me, or, but she was really just as important as freshman English was the student success class. And so she implemented that through Prentice Hall.
Right.
She wrote a book and did the whole thing.
That's
so
cool.
I was fortunate to work for her.
It's good to have people like that.
Sorry?
It's good to have people like that, mentors.
Yeah.
And we're back. You're listening to Beyond the Numbers on my 105.5 FM, part of the Wall Street Business Network. This is Mark Bellows, your host of this fine show. I am a tax CPA with Clifton Larson Allen in the Roseville area. You can get a hold of me at 916-784-7800 or mark.bellows@claconnect.com. If you've got any tax questions or accounting questions or Beyond the Numbers questions, feel free to give me a call or shoot me an email. Today we are talking with Stacy Whittingham with Leap Yoga. I have not given out your contact info yet. StacyWyoga.com.
That's a good way to reach me.
So if people want to get a hold of Stacy, they want to ask more about Leap Yoga, your experiences, that'd be the way to get a hold of you. StacyWyoga.com.
And also it lists the trainings and the retreats and things that I'll be offering in the upcoming year. So
Retreats? So do you put on yoga retreats? Where do you go?
I have not traveled internationally with my retreats as of yet. I'm looking at that for next year. I was busy raising the kids and didn't want to overextend. So most of my retreats have just been in the local area, the Santa Cruz Mountains, Lake Tahoe. I just returned from one up in Lake Tahoe at Grand Lebacan over the weekend, and that was fantastic. And I think part of what I love about the retreats so much is, like I said before, community is important. And as people are coming into classes and leaving classes, and we all have our busy schedules, I don't get a chance to get to know these people on the level that I'd like to, unless we do something together.
Right.
And so sometimes it's hard for me to believe that I actually can earn a living doing that, but it's just a joy. It's a real joy.
So what do people do at the retreat besides yoga?
So it depends on the retreat itself. Some of them are more educational, like the one I'm going to be taking in September. I'll be taking a group to Mount Madonna, which is in the Santa Cruz Mountains. I've been there several times. And those oftentimes are more educational. So we do some training. So for people who are interested in being yoga teachers or who are yoga teachers, we do some training while we're there. But you can expect the one in Lake Tahoe was really just about having a fun experience together. And so we got up every day and we did meditation, and we included a component of a fitness. Nice. And so we had someone come in and do a fitness class in the morning, and then we'd have breakfast, and then we'd do yoga, we'd practice yoga together, and some free time. Free time is important because people are busy, and this is a retreat, and so people can kind of have their time to do what they want to do. And then we might do a hike and then gather up in the evening after dinner and do maybe one more kind of like relaxing yoga class, like a yin class, and then go to bed. So
did you guys go down to the Truckee River at all?
We didn't this time. We didn't have time. It was just Friday to Sunday, so it was a pretty quick trip. Yeah.
Well, my prior co-host Katie, who did this show with me for a while, she's gone on a number of yoga retreats with her mom on one. But I think she also went to Bali for a yoga. It wasn't a retreat because she was there for 10 days or 12 days, but she did a lot of yoga while she was there, so maybe it was.
When you go abroad, generally they're longer.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's not worth it just to go for a short period of time.
Yeah.
I actually did go to Bali as well, and I did a training there.
Oh,
and that was fantastic. So I am looking at taking a group to Costa Rica next year, and also partnering with another yoga studio in Davis, Akasha Yoga, to do a destination retreat with them as well.
Nice.
So.
And where are you guys considering for that?
Mexico, Costa Rica, possibly.
Oh, cool.
There's so many places. One that sounds really fantastic is Majorca. That's been on my radar for a while.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
More to come. So StacyWyoga.com. StacyWyoga.com. You can find all the information about Stacy's retreats and Leap Yoga and some other things. So you were involved in Rock the Boat. That's an interesting story because I remember that as a kid.
Yeah,
a young man,
funny.
I suppose. And then you were with that for a little bit, but then you did the lead generation, and you're making money or had to focus on making money.
Yeah. And traveling to different conferences and things like that, networking, and and I would find this time during my day where I could sneak off and go to yoga. I was practicing at a place called Hot Yoga Sunrise at the time, and I'd sneak away for an hour and then go back and go back to my thing, back into my hole. And that continued for a while until I met my teacher, who I've done a lot of studying with, just randomly came to Sacramento. And a friend kind of dragged me to the class down in Midtown at Zuda Yoga. And this teacher started drumming, chanting, singing in Sanskrit, which is kind of the ancient language of yoga. And it lit something in me. And at the time, I think I was living a life where I was unsatisfied with the circumstances of my life at the time. And that kind of is something that I always knew, is that I wanted to work in some area where I felt like there was purpose involved and where I was helping to make things better. And that was important to me. And so this was sort of like the opportunity to make a change. So when I met this teacher, I did not think I was going to be a yoga teacher. That was not on my radar at all.
Right.
But he announced that he was doing a training, and I just said, I've got to go. And this is just for my personal life, and he's got something to teach me. I just knew. Well, as things do, sometimes, the obstacles come up, and there were just many things that occurred. My family was in a trip in Park City. I had to leave the kids and everything and fly to San Francisco. I got sick. I had to sleep on a friend's sailboat, just all these things. And I made it there, and 10 days, 10 hours a day in that training. And
wow.
It was pretty intense. Yeah. I mean, I didn't own the right yoga pants. I didn't, I wasn't that deep into it at the time,
right.
But I just knew there was something. And, it transformed me. I don't know. I was driving back to Sacramento after that training, and it was like the things that weighed heavily on me at the time just suddenly didn't matter as much, and I felt really good. So I came back to Sacramento, not really knowing, still not thinking I wanted to be a teacher.
Right.
And my teacher at Hot Yoga Sunrise said, "Come on, you're going to assist me now." And so that's kind of what got me into. She said, "If you don't do it now, you're not going to do it." Yeah. And so she was really wise, and I still have a lot of gratitude for her for kind of pushing me. And so then it was just kind of like things started to evolve, and I picked up some classes, and then I decided, life is too short to do something that doesn't light you up. And I closed the business, and I had to take this, and we named Leap for a reason, right? Because
leap of faith.
Exactly. Yeah. And the story of one of the owners who was actually in radio, he's got a story about his own journey that kind of is about the same thing, but had to take a leap of faith and let go of something that felt pretty stable and secure, but that I knew wasn't working for me. Right. And try something new and different, and maybe even shore up the finances and do some different things in order to get this off the ground, which I think a lot of entrepreneurs end up doing. Oh, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
To follow their dreams. So then kind of the rest is history. Taught a lot of classes, started teaching, the other component to what I do is holistic nutrition. Right. And that was also an interesting series of events because I was studying the yoga. I didn't even know what vegan meant when I took my first yoga teacher training. Everybody was throwing around these words, vegan, I didn't know. And I met a man from Nepal, this 90-pound, wise man from Nepal. And he's one of the lead chefs at Cafe Gratitude, and he had worked at some different healing centers, and he was all about nutrition and breath and holistic living and strong accent. You could barely understand him. Yeah. He sat next to me in this training, and I looked over at him, and he gave me his name, which I couldn't pronounce, and I asked him 3 times because I knew I wanted to know this man somehow. And we ended up starting a business together in San Francisco, which was called Bhakti Kitchen. And we did food preparation for yoga events primarily. We catered Iyengar's 90th birthday party and did some other things over there. It was all about conscious preparation of food and intake of food, and then also clean eating. Right. So, and we don't subscribe necessarily to any sort of veganism, vegetarianism, this sort of put it in the box kind of thing. Yeah. It was a lot about listening to your body. Your body, yeah. Mm-hmm, paying attention to that, which coincides with the yoga. And so we did that for a couple years. I learned a lot.
But is that business continued on, or did it?
It hasn't, because we all moved to different geographical areas. So to have the physical food preparation and that became too challenging. But what has continued out of that was there were 3 of us partners, and then we all kind of moved to different areas but kept doing it in our own form, kept offering that in our own form. And so that's where mine sort of morphed into food education and cleansing and things like healing. So my sister got diagnosed with cancer during that time, and it was ovarian cancer. So that was a pretty scary time for us.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And then we, so this information and study came in real handy. And all of a sudden it went from feeling a bit like an interest to, wow, this is really important now. Right. And so I was able to work with her quite a bit, and she's doing great.
Okay.
Yeah. She did a combination of holistic and Western medicine, and she's doing really well.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, we are going to take a commercial break. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation. Stacy Whittingham with Leap Yoga. And if you want to get more information on Stacy, you can go to stacywyoga.com. It's our website. We'll be right back. So is she in full remission?
She is, and it's been 7 years. Oh, so she's doing really good. It's interesting how life kind of just unfolds and things come to you at the right time. Mm-hmm. So she was 38 at the time, so really young, and things just kept going wrong with her health. And I was just saying, I even said, why don't you go get this test for ovarian cancer? And she said, it was the CA-125. She said, I've requested it, and they're not giving it to me. Mm-hmm. They say, no way is it that. Right. And So finally, she on Mother's Day ended up swollen, big abdomen, full. And she lives in Phoenix, and man, the head gynecologist said, "Have you had this test?" And she said, "I've asked," and so they gave it to her, and that's how they discovered it. But yeah, it was pretty crazy. Yeah, and then of course me, everything I was learning wanted to just go the holistic route.
Yeah.
And my other sister, who's very, she's my other sister. She's a business person, and she's very like logical, and
right.
she wanted.
10 seconds, I guess.
Oh wow.
Oh,
okay.
No. So she was
all about the Western, right? So we both dug in and we did our homework and we presented it, and then my sister chose.
Wow.
Yeah.
We're back. You're listening to Beyond the Numbers. I'm on 1055. This is Mark Bellows, your host of this show. I'm a tax principal with Clifton and Larson Allen in the Roseville office. You can get a hold of me at 916-784-7800 or mark.bellows@colaconnect.com. I often get reminded to give out my information on the air because I need to, so I'm trying to get to do that every time. Today we're talking to Stacy Whittingham. She is a instructor and part owner with Leap Yoga in Folsom, over by Folsom High School. She's stacywyoga.com. And so to maybe tell us some of the things you've learned from a business point of view about from what you've gone through in your career. I know that's such an open question.
Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot.
Okay, so you had a catering company for a period of time.
Yeah,
so you had to hire people for that.
We didn't. We did it all ourselves, and then we gave workshops and it was more education.
Okay.
But we did, of course, include the actual food too.
And how did you procure the food? How did you figure out where to get it from?
We got it from the cleanest sources,
Okay.
Farmers markets,
Okay.
Rainbow Grocery.
Did you run into issues with like not being able to get some at some time? Did you ever have those kind of issues?
No.
Everything kind of fell into place.
Yeah, we were able to source it pretty well for the events that we booked, and yeah, so the physical food preparation was useful. However, I think the most important thing is the education around it. So, like I said, my why changed.
Right.
My why went from an interest to, now we need to figure out how to save my sister. It became a much bigger thing.
Sure.
And so I started giving workshops in San Francisco and also here in Sacramento at different yoga studios. And actually, I even worked with the sheriff's department. I did different things everywhere, and just delivering some information that would help people keep their bodies in balance. And then with my sister being a survivor, I have felt that this is my way to give back for that. So it has a really profound why, and actually the whole thing, the yoga practice, all of it has a really profound why for me. That's very personal, and I appreciate the opportunity to share.
Yeah. That's not everyone can find their why or pursue their why, right? I mean, that's a big challenge, and that's kind of a newer concept in business, if you will. I mean, I think it's been there for a long time, but it's been coined relatively recently.
Yeah.
About finding your why and living your purpose and that sort of thing. So
I think.
But to your point, it can make life much more fulfilling.
Yeah.
If you do find it.
And life is short.
It's
that thing that we don't want to have the reminders that life is short. We don't want to have those times. I mean, I see this all the time in yoga. Is people come because they're in crisis, right? It's like, and but life is short, and we should do what we're passionate about. And this whole thing of like, you have something that's exciting to you. I was actually having this conversation with my son this morning, who's a senior in college, and he's studying business there.
And where's he going?
He's at University of Utah.
Oh, Utah. Okay.
He's in the business scholars program there, and he's being exposed to different things.
What is it? Does he know what he wants to do with his business degree?
Well, he's finding out what he doesn't want to do. But his passion has been football. He played at Folsom High when they won the state championships, and this has been his dream.
Does he play at University of Utah?
Played at University of Utah until he tore his second ACL.
Ooh.
And at that point in time, he had to decide risk reward. How's this weighing out for you? And he gave it up, but it's been a struggle for him. This has been a passion for him since he was really young. And so we were having this conversation, and he's saying, nothing's really lighting me up right now. And And I said, but it will. You'll find that thing, and it's not always the same thing, right? But I think sometimes when we take this thing we're passionate about, and then we turn it into a business, right? And again, it's the art of marrying that.
Yeah.
We make decisions initially to further that dream, that vision. And then kind of like a side product of that is that, okay, we turn a profit now, and actually I can do this as a living. And then if we're not careful, the decisions that are being made can often go to support that bottom line rather than the vision or the dream that you started with.
Which is why it's good, I think, to regularly check back in on your vision and your dream.
Yes.
See how is what I'm doing now aligning with what my original vision or dream, goal, or mission was? Because it's easy to get off course.
Yeah.
Especially if you're like you said, if you're focused on the bottom line, if you've got to make payroll, if you got to make profit to cover this or whatnot.
And
so,
you have to.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's an important part
absolutely.
of keeping this dream alive,
Yeah.
right? So this is what I'm doing now. So now becoming an owner of a business, we do a lot of business at Leap. We have a lot of people coming and going every day. There's a lot of moving parts. We have staff, we have teachers, and in those moments where I say to myself, okay, I'm tired. Because when you become a business owner, you could work 24 hours a day, and you could still have more to do. And
you're never fully off when you're a business owner, because there's always stuff to be done.
There's always things to be done.
That could be done.
Yeah, and I find that you just said it right, that could be done, but maybe they don't have to be done, and then you work on the balance piece there.
Yeah.
But so I've taken this thing that I'm passionate about, and I resisted becoming an owner for a reason, because I felt like it was important to become an expert at what I'm doing before turning it into a business.
Right.
And I remember long ago getting the advice that become an expert and the money will come. Become an expert and the money will come. Don't start with worrying about the money.
Yes.
You become an expert and the money will come. And so I took that approach with this whole kind of yogic journey. It's like, okay, I have no idea how I'm going to support myself doing this, but hey, let's give it a go. And studied and continued to learn and teach and gain experience. And now it's different because I'm in a partnership now, actually a corporation, and we have all these logistical things that we're working with, and it's a great teacher for me. Yeah.
So you have five owners?
There are, two couples and myself.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
So how did you guys figure out who to have do what? You mentioned off air, or when we were talking about one person's in charge of finances. So how did you guys figure out who's going to do what in the business?
Well, we all have pretty obvious strengths, and also to that point, pretty clear weaknesses. They're just not good at everything,
Sure.
and that's the way it is. And so some of our owners have a lot of experience actually in radio and television, and so they are more in charge of the marketing. And then one of them handles the financial piece of the studio. And then we have somebody who's an excellent graphic designer, and he does that piece of the business. And then we have somebody who's manages sort of like the operations of the studio itself, which is like the staff and cleaning and ordering merchandise for the boutique and things like that. So, and then I do the programming and hire the teachers and manage the teachers and do that sort of thing. So.
When you hire people, when you hire teachers, it seems like sometimes they have a following.
Yeah.
Is that true? So if you've hired let's say you hire a certain teacher, would that person tend to bring in some students with them because they like to follow a particular teacher from place to place?
That can be a tricky aspect of the business, and that's partly why I feel like it's not a good practice to fish in someone else's pond, right? Yeah. Because first of all, the more yoga, the better. That's how I feel. It's like yoga studios, great. Open them up, teach people, let them practice, have a space in a community. And so the more yoga, the better. But I think there are certain business practice around that where you can be respectful of other studios, and you can actually sort of, again, synergize with them to create an outcome and an effect. And so in hiring teachers, yes, but I think that I look less for somebody who already has a following and more for somebody who can create one.
Okay.
And build.
And how do you figure that out? Is it just a feeling that you have, or do you actually like have, okay, you know, you guys say, hey, why don't you teach a class and we're going to take it right now and kind of see how the other students and ourselves, I mean, how do you kind of get that sense of whether or not the person's the right fit?
Yeah, I oftentimes I'll go back to their why. Why are you doing what you're doing?
Yeah.
You know, what fires you up about this? And I think that catches on.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're fired up about what you're doing, you can't help but impact other people.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just going to happen that way.
It comes across. So.
And if you're doing it as a job, that's a little different.
Mm-hmm.
And so yoga is unique in the way that you can study it your entire life and still only know a fraction of what it has to offer. I mean, that's what I believe, and that's what I've found to be my truth, is that I could study this stuff my whole entire life and still not really get it. I mean, I still have the light bulb going off all the time. And so I look for teachers who are interested in continuing their education and who have their own personal practice that they can authentically share from. So we can all be a talking head, and we can all regurgitate something that we've heard another teacher say that we thought sounded really good. But the teachers that I believe are most effective are those that have the experience for themselves. They have a disciplined practice, a regular practice, and then they share from that place of integration. And so that's what I'm looking for.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, today, we're out of time. So we've been talking today with Stacy Whittingham, instructor and part owner of Leap Yoga. Iron Point Drive, is that it?
It's on Iron Point Drive in Folsom. And again, one of the strengths is that we have a lot of different styles, so check that out.
So check them out, and you can go to our website, stacywyoga.com, if you want more information about her retreats, her practice, all that. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks. How do you know Rick and Gianna? Are you guys neighbors?
Tennis.
Oh, tennis.
Yeah.
Are you tennis player with Gianna?
Yes.
Okay.
We go way back.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah. When I moved to California about 19